Okay, we have a new synthesizer in the studio. This one is the Osmose by Expressive E. And this is the third time I've made this video. And you might ask yourself, well, what's going on? Why is it so hard to make a video? And the answer is I don't know how to properly put in words or to sum up what this new synthesizer means to me and to potentially other musicians. So I'm going to try it again. And this is what I want to do in this video. I don't want to show you a ton of examples of the sounds, but what I want to do in this video is just help you figure out if this is something that you would benefit from. On my channel, I like to show things that will help people grow as a musician, but I also like to help people find out what the right products for them are. So let's get past the fact that Expressive E sent this to me, and I love them, and I want them to do well. I don't have affiliate links for this one. I just want to show you what this thing's all about because it really is amazing. Loopop said this is the most revolutionary product for the piano since the invention of the piano from the harpsichord. You know, because before the piano, it was a harpsichord, you could only play one volume. And then the piano or the pianoforte or the soft loud came out and that thing had dynamics. Well, this thing here has dynamics, but it also has pitch bend. There are devices that have been out for quite some time that can do this. This one just has a different way of doing it. Anyways, why is this thing so great? Well, it's got all sorts of functionality built into it that allows you to press a note down, and then it allows you to press the note further, and then allows you to pitch bend. And then the other aspect it does have is the ability to slide from one note to another and control how fast the shift is between those two notes. So it's kind of like portamento, but giving you extreme control over the portamento. So if we try this patch here, you can hear that as I slowly move to the next note, the pitch shift is slow. And if I go fast, it's fast between them. The other benefit of all of those controls that I've just talked about isn't just the fact that you can do them, it's the fact that you can do them on one note, independent of the other notes that are happening at that time. And when I first found out about this, I was like, I don't see myself needing to be able to play chords and have one note have some vibrato on it until I actually tried it. And then I was like, oh dang, this is actually pretty cool. Let me show you. Really cool stuff. So not only pitch bend, but the aftertouch, all of that stuff can happen independent on each separate pitch. And that's called MIDI polyphonic expression, or MPE, and the other gigantic selling feature of this synth. And again, I did not think I would appreciate this as much as I do. I will talk a little bit about MPE later on so you can have a better understanding of how this is actually working in terms of your DAW, but also just why it matters to you. Why should it matter? So those are the main things that this keyboard does. But what they've done with those controls and really thinking through them, like, should we have the ability to slide up a note like other keyboards do and control dynamics that way? And they chose not to. And I think one of the reasons they chose not to is because the way this keyboard is set up right now, you are going to be playing intuitively with this new paradigm. So you can close your eyes and still play expressively, or you can use muscle memory. I think that's more what it is. I mean, we all want to be able to make a stank face and hit the right notes, you know, or hit the right spot on the keys. If you have some kind of volume sensitive spot on a key going this way, you have to hit that spot every time. You have to hit that right spot. With this keyboard, the way it works is you can just play your notes. You don't have to think about where you're hitting them, just like a regular piano, but you also have the ability to bend these pitches and then to use that other level of expression. And then it's also the fact that they have 500 beautiful patches on here that are tied into those aspects of playing that I just kind of talked through. And as you'll see in future videos, it does a brilliant job of controlling virtual instruments and breathes new life into virtual instruments of all sorts. So next question before I get into some of the more fun bits of playing some patches are, who is this synth for? And I think this synth is for synth players who have extensive keyboard skills and want to branch out into a new level of control with their fingers. Composers who want to breathe life into pads and synths in their compositions, and maybe even get into using it for controlling the orchestral instruments and the dynamics of orchestral instruments. And then another huge category is sound designers. I do music and sound design for a Paw Patrol iOS video game, and I've already started using this synth in my sound design just for user interface kind of things. And my level of control to be able to, even that pitch sliding thing, I'm using that for a little drop down. I've got a synth sound that I pulled up, and then the drop down happens at a certain speed, and I just drop that thing in and get the timing just perfect by playing it. And sure, I could go in and draw that kind of stuff in, or I could play with portamento until I get it just right. But there's something really sweet about this quick muscle memory sort of tactile thing that's happening with the synth. And I really think that's what they're going for with this. So let's get into the patches now. And I want to talk about the patch browser because it is beautiful. What they've done with the layout of it, the look of it. They make software too. If you haven't looked into Expressive Ease software, make sure you check them out. I've got a video on Imagine and a video on Lie, which is with their Touche controller, which I've got right here. This is the Touche, and I love this thing too. This thing is really a really neat way to control your synths. I've got a video where I'm using it on a Moog, and beautiful way to control synths. I'm probably going to stick to this from now on more, but this still has a place, definitely. And maybe in a future video I could go, what's the benefit of each, right? And then they also have a program called Noisy. So check out those ones in my description. I should have links to those videos as well. And here you can see we're on the factory patches. You have a bunch of user patches. In the factory patches, all you have to do is go to types and you can get to the browser. We can see things like bowed and electric pianos and flutes and reeds and stuff like that. And then there's demo as well. Maybe this is just kind of like their sort of flagship patches. Like if I go to this Chick's Lead, this one is just awesome. So really nice layout of their browser. Very easy to go through and find a sound. Like let's go to a bass, and then let's go to, I don't want aggressive, I just want clean. Let's try that. Let's go look at what we can do with the bass patch. We can click the synth button, and here we can see we've got macros and global effects, a little EQ and a compressor that we can set on it, and then a few things like pitch bend and that we can change if we want to, and the pedal. So we got the macros, and if I want to dig into some aspect of this sound, it's not like I can go into this on a traditional synth and access every characteristic of what is making that sound. We get macros. In this case, we get 6 different things that we can control. So we can play with the cutoff. And then we got chorus. Kind of a unison thing. And then we've got filter envelope. And then we've got just a couple more things. Just kind of limited in terms of what you can do with it. But you can go and download software and then dig further into the patches. I haven't got to that point yet, and the software is kind of scaring me a little bit, so I will get there. But what I would love to see in the future is some easy way for us to go, okay, there isn't a macro on here for this aspect of the sound. Is it possible for me to add that into the software, dump it into here, so that if I was playing live with this patch or something, or just in the future using the patch, I would always have access to that control. Next thing is the global effects, and another downside to me is the fact that you can only have reverb or delay on as an effect. But then I found out that there were some patches in here that have delay built in. So clearly in the software that's running in the background inside this synthesizer, What I would also love to see is more delay put on the macros for more patches, so that we could have delay as some aspect that we can just dial in, so that we can use the reverb as our one effect that we put on the sound. So if I put reverb as the one effect, and then let's go to this extend. I don't know what it is, but it sounds nice. I happen to have picked up a Delverb by Universal Audio, and I've been using that a lot. It sounds so good, and it sounds amazing, just kind of left on this synth, and then I just kind of dial it back or add more if I need it. Let's go back to demo for a second, play through a couple patches. So here's a patch that actually has delay built in. So then I can go to global effects and keep reverb on that as well. Tons of these physical modeling type sounds too. Really beautiful organic type sounds. This thing also has an arpeggiator. And then of course you can do things like press into the aftertouch and then have that trigger some different aspect of the arpeggiator. So this whole functionality that's built into aftertouch isn't bound to just, controlling a cutoff filter or something like that. It's able to tap into all sorts of characteristics of sound, including an arpeggiator. So do you hear how my pitch was kind of warbling there? If you're not digging that, you can go over to the sensitivity and you can start playing with how pitch bending works with the sensitivity on the patches. So right now it's set to a semitone. And if I want to work on a patch like this, I could probably just turn it right off. So now I can play as hard as I want, and I can bend, and the pitches aren't going to change. Right? So anyways, that's the arpeggiator, all sorts of different things you can do with that. And if you like something like an arpeggiator that you've got set up, you can just hit this little freeze button, and now when you go change patches, the next patch is going to get that same arpeggiator set up. Now the other question is, what is MPE, or MIDI polyphonic expression? When you play a regular controller keyboard or synthesizer, what's happening is you play the notes, that information gets sent to your DAW or gets sent to the sounds. If you change the pitch bend, it changes the pitch on all the sounds you're playing. And if you change the modulation wheel or other controls, you're changing all of the sounds at once. And with MPE, you can kind of think of it as if every single note gets its own set of instructions. That also means that you have to have software that can handle that. So something like Cubase and Nuendo and Ableton Live, Studio One, all of these programs can handle MPE, but some programs can't yet. So hopefully those other programs, the one I'm talking about, Machine, I hope they get that soon. But for now, you've got to use programs like Cubase that can actually record the notes that you're playing and then assign controller data to change the pitch. And to see how I was bending these top two pitches in and out, but these bottom ones weren't changing at all. So what does it look like in something like Cubase? And it's not actually that scary. Let's find a good patch for this. So we can see that I was pushing harder on these notes right here and not really pushing down on these bottom notes until the very end. So you can see how every single note gets its own set of instructions. And with Cubase, you can right-click on it and you can go Open Note Expression Editor, and now we can see what has been written in. So you can see my modulation right here, and if I change to pitch bend, we can see the pitch bend that's been written for that single note. And then we can see the aftertouch, which shows how hard I was playing. And then one other thing that you'll notice is if I click on the note, you can see that this one is on MIDI channel 6. This one's on MIDI channel 11. MIDI channel 2? Like what the heck's going on here? So every single note gets its own MIDI channel, and that's basically how they figured out, okay, how can we make this whole system work without adding some entirely new system to MIDI? So all they did is kind of hijack the fact that there's 16 MIDI channels and give every note a different MIDI channel as you go along. And then let's just check what one note looks like in your software. So I'm going to right-click on that note and go Open Note Expression Editor, and I can see the aftertouch, and I can go in and I can start drawing it in. Okay, so you can hear how that changed it. And then let's also look at the pitch bend. Now this is where things get a little bit uglier, I find, in Cubase. So what I want somebody to tell me is how we can make this bigger. Anybody know how to do that easier in Cubase? Because I haven't figured it out yet. And feel free to chime in the comments if you know an easier way to edit pitch bend on a single note in MPE. We're still got a ways to go, I think, in terms of dealing with MPE. And so what does that mean to you as a player? It means that sometimes you're just going to have to nail each note as you play it, as opposed to drawing things in. I got to say, even as a keyboard player, I do like to do a lot of drawing in of things, and it seems to be a lot tougher here in Cubase. But this is how the information is dealt with inside your DAW. So we got a ways to go yet, but we're getting closer. It's just going to be one aspect of this keyboard that you're going to have to live with. But more videos on this synth coming, and I want to know what you want to see on this synth, because there's a lot of mystery around it as well. And if you're going to go buy it, you want to make darn sure you're spending your money on the right thing. So please ask me those kinds of questions of what you want to see in future videos on the Osmose. I couldn't resist the urge to just play around a little bit. So I just have one quick idea that I just came up with. And I've got a bunch of tracks in there. So I've got a resonant drum patch in there. Next one is Devon. Clavichordy kind of thing. I've got a pad. A bass. So everything I do now is going to have glorious vibrato on it. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm not going to go that crazy, but it's kind of tempting right now. Anyways, last thing I'll do is just put a little lead line on there. Anyways, this thing is so cool, you guys. It really is an incredible device. And working with it in Cubase, right now I'm using MIDI tracks and audio tracks, which is dumb. I should be using external instruments, but I will show you how to use proper external instruments in a future video and go over the whole setup of this, because I think that's super important. But regardless, working with it in Cubase hasn't been a nightmare. It's just different. So it's going to be a different way of working with MIDI information. Some things you took for granted when you're only working with, non-MPE stuff is going to be different in here. And this is kind of the way going forward. So we need to learn how to work with MPE for sure. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. I'm so glad you stayed till the end. Here's a little playing for you, and we'll see you in the next video. And thanks, Expressive E, for sending this over. I loved getting to meet you, Chris. You guys are just such an incredible team over there doing really amazing, passionate stuff. And I appreciate you. And I think a whole lot of people out there appreciate you guys too. So here we go.